Good afternoon and welcome to Chargers Outside Zone. I'm Chuck.
I'm Thomas.
And
today we'll be talking about the Broncos.
So this will be our early look at the 2022 Denver Broncos as we're in OTAs and before mandatory minicamp. How does their current 90-man roster set up?
Yes.
But first, there was a big drop this week on June 1st.
Yes.
The Madden 23 cover was released or announced.
I know it's not football news technically, but we're covering it because we like it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was the only option for
Agreed.
them.
With the passing of John Madden here recently, very fitting that on the 34th anniversary of the original Madden cover being revealed, that they went ahead and revealed Madden 23, an updated version of that original Madden cover, paying respect to the guy whose name is on it. Looks great. The game looks great.
Yes.
As always.
It just matters the gameplay and...
Yeah, we'll see how it's received by the Madden community. So that was pretty exciting this week.
And you had an idea about a mode.
Well, yeah, I played that original Madden game on the Sega Genesis, and it was quite interesting to play. It was a very modern version back then. Compared to Tecmo Bowl. I know Tecmo Bowl had a lot of fans, especially people who like playing with Bo Jackson. But yeah, this really got the passing game into video games. So I would kind of like to see that original Madden as a game mode with the updated players. So that was my idea.
Yes.
Who knows if that will ever happen. They probably tell me just to go buy a joystick that has the original one loaded on it and have a good day.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but now we'll get into our early look at the Denver Broncos. But first, this is a father-son hobby. We are not experts, and we do our best to stay away from hot takes.
Which we have done really well in.
Yep. And with that, we'll jump right in. Shortly after the 2021 Denver Broncos season ended, Vic Fangio was
let go.
Yeah, he was fired by the Denver Broncos, and so they went ahead and brought in a new regime.
Yes.
So this is the second team in the AFC West in that division to
get a new head coach.
To have a first-year head coach should set up well for the Chiefs and for the Chargers. To be playing against those first year.
Two different situations, though.
Yeah, a little bit different situation. This team decided to move on from Vic Fangio. Interesting, they decided to hire Nathaniel Hackett, who was serving as the offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. This isn't the same kind of duo that the Raiders brought in, because remember we talked about them giving the Patriots way a go. These are two individuals from separate backgrounds.
Will they mesh well?
Yeah, will they mesh well? Nathaniel Hackett, a product of the Doug Marrone tree, if you will, was with Doug Marrone at Syracuse, followed him to Buffalo, on to Jacksonville, but then in 2019 went to Green Bay. To be their offensive coordinator under Matt LaFleur and to coach with, Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback.
Yes.
I think Matt LaFleur was the one that was calling the plays, so this may be a similar situation to Mike McDaniel in Miami where, this is his first year as the head coach. Is he going to call plays? Will he leave it to his offensive coordinator? Nathaniel Hackett, I don't think was calling the offense last year. I think that was Matt LaFleur. So his first year calling offensive plays, if he decides to do that or if he turns that over to his offensive coordinator.
He was the one that put the game plan together, though.
Right. Similar situation. Yeah. put the game plan together, do the install, and then on game day, it was Matt LaFleur. And let's see if he holds on, or if he, as the head coach, decides to be the play caller or turns that over to the offensive coordinator.
Yes.
George Payton, he started out as a Chicago Bear scout in the 90s, I believe. He eventually moved on to the Miami Dolphins for 6 years, was there when Nick Saban was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins.
So kind of Alabama ties?
So I'm sure he has a relationship with Nick Saban and obviously with Alabama and all the talent that goes through there. He'll be able to reach out to Nick, and like every other general manager and head coach, I'm sure Nick will share his thoughts on the players entering the draft
in upcoming years or things like that.
After the Dolphins, he moved on to Minnesota, where he's a couple different positions here and there, but as part of that Zimmer, Rick Spielman regime in Minnesota. Obviously, as they were let go at the end of the 2021 season, he was available.
Yes.
And was able to then bring his talents. Well, the one thing about George Payton taking over as general manager, and the one thing I don't fully understand, John Elway is still in the building.
Yes.
I think he's not as involved as he was a couple draft classes ago.
And new ownership as well.
Yeah, and we're looking at new ownership. So these guys have a lot of off-field organizational issues to manage, throughout the start of their tenure, if you will.
Yes.
But interesting that they weren't necessarily paired up at their previous location, like a Brian Dable and Joe Shane with the Giants, or a Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels for the Raiders.
Yes.
So these are two individuals coming from different teams and establishing a new regime. Yeah. But they got busy right away, right?
Yes.
And pulled off one of the blockbuster trades in the offseason. Lots of rumors if Russell Wilson was happy in Seattle, if Pete Carroll still wanted Russell Wilson. And so the answer to that question was no. Pete Carroll did not want Russell Wilson, or was interested in a Drew Lock. And this deal was put together.
No, it looks one-sided.
Yeah, when you look at all the different things or the different assets moving from one team to the other, the Seahawks received quarterback Drew Lock, tight end Noah Fant, who was a first rounder in 4 years ago. That pick 20 that the Steelers traded with Denver. Noah Fant came in, so he's entering his fourth year in the league. Defensive end Shelby Harris, so that lots of snaps from Shelby Harris for the Denver Broncos, so that'll be somebody they need to work on replacing. And then you also have the 2022 first round, 2023 first round, 2022 second, 2023 second, and a 2022 fifth, in exchange for one quarterback, Russell Wilson.
Let Russ cook.
Yeah, Mr. Unlimited. He obviously is a winner of a Super Bowl and the loser of a Super Bowl on the famous Marshawn Lynch non-running play, interception, Malcolm Butler in the end zone.
Yes.
And then the Broncos also went ahead and received a 2022 fourth round in this year's draft. Like you said, it looks one-sided, but it all comes down to how Russ cooks, right?
Yes.
So that was their big statement. One of the things that I think enabled them to come in after the season, in a season where Von Miller is traded, the previous regime was able to get a second and a third round draft pick from the Rams in exchange for Von Miller. So I think that allowed for Denver to give up so many assets because they had that second round and that third round from the Rams.
Well,
and
the Rams had a different mindset.
yeah, the Rams obviously look at team building differently than a lot of other teams, if you will. But I think that previous regime, whoever made that decision on the Von Miller trade, enabled this regime to make this kind of move. Yes.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But the Rams had a totally different
Understood.
mindset.
Yep. And then their offseason moves listed here, acquiring Russell Wilson, signing Billy Turner from the Packers, following Nathaniel Hackett from the Packers. They signed 3 players from the 49ers, defensive tackle DJ Jones, cornerback K'Wan Williams, right tackle Tom Compton. They signed quarterback Josh Johnson from the Ravens. The other big free agency signing was getting Randy Gregory from the Cowboys. There was a little bit of drama on the Jerry Jones side as Jerry thought he had Randy under contract, but then Randy decided to head to Denver.
Press the tweet button a little too quickly.
Yeah.
A little too quickly.
Another Ravens player in tight end Eric Tomlinson, an Eagles linebacker in Alex Singleton, and then you see some secondary along with a punter. The players that have left the team, Teddy Bridgewater, obviously with Russell Wilson, no re-signing there. Teddy went to Miami. The trades listed in there that we covered. I think with Vic Fangio leaving and Bryce Callahan being a free agent, there was probably not a lot of interest on the Broncos side. So Bryce Callahan obviously coming to the Chargers, just a great fit for him as his time in Denver came to an end there.
But not in the division.
Yeah, and then they released Deshaun Hamilton, wide receiver, who I believe is now with the Falcons, but not a lot of players of note. I think Kenny Young was maybe a 1-year rental there. So that was a lot of the free agency, comings and goings, if you will.
Moves.
Yep. This is their draft, and when you think about acquiring Russell Wilson, sending off your first and second round pick, and I think there was one other 5th rounder. This is quite an interesting draft haul for this team.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how many of these players are going to make a 2022 impact on the field. But a lot of these players you could see in year 2, 3, and 4 of their career.
Making an impact.
Yeah, definitely making an impact. So they, with that Rams pick at the end of the second round, they go out and get edge Nick Benito. So long-term answer to, Von Miller or replacing a Bradley Chubb.
A lot of edge depth.
Yeah, and bringing in edge depth for this year and for him to learn under a Randy Gregory and a Bradley Chubb. And so it'll be good, I think, there. And then they started to move around a lot in the draft, it seemed. At pick 80, they went ahead and took tight end Greg Dulcich. A lot of buzz, if you will, about Greg Dulcich being maybe tight end number 1 in this class. I don't think he went tight end 1, but I think lots of talk. Yeah, lots of talk of him. A lot of draft Twitter thinking that he would be a great receiving tight end in the league.
Lots of draft hype.
Yep. At pick 115, Damari Mathis. I think he put up a great 40 time in Indianapolis and caught a lot of people's attention. Not a name that was talked a lot about before that 40 time, but an athlete, and we'll see how he gets in the mix. Pick 116 and pick 206, they took edge or defensive end Awuzurike out of Iowa State. Interesting, Dom Capers is a consultant for the Denver Broncos now. One-time Pittsburgh Steeler, 3-4 defensive guy. This is a player that fits that defensive end for a 3-4. And then Matt Henningsen is also in that similar mold. And
so I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that they're going 3-4 defense?
I mean, you have Dom Capers around for
a reason,
and your base, their base defense. They'll look at 3-4 as their base, and then spend most of their time in packages like everybody else, right?
Yes.
A safety and a wide receiver I'm not overly familiar with. A center, bringing in a center backup in Luke Wattenberg. I'm sorry, the safety at 152 was Delaren Turner-Yell, and at pick 162 was wide receiver Montrell Washington. Center Luke Wattenberg at 171. Matt Henningsen, defensive end at 206. And at 232, their draft ended with cornerback Fayon Hicks. But
so a lot of depth pieces.
Yeah, and a lot of names at the top of that list that
could start.
I wouldn't say year one starters, but
won't start year one.
But definitely in the mix to make this team better in years 2, 3, and 4 for sure,
and compete for starting jobs.
Yeah, and I think if I haven't clearly stated it before, during the draft, the Broncos were not scared to move back, move up, when apparently they didn't see anybody on the board that they felt was the value they needed at that point. So they would trade back, and then as they were trading back, if there was somebody on the board that they wanted, they would spend some of that draft capital that they were acquiring and go back up and take those players that they targeted. So you can really see that they target a certain type of player,
very aggressive,
and draft, and that they go after them. So interesting to see if that carries on into their second draft next year, and see how this staff continues to move along.
Yes.
Let's see. As we then we're through the free agency period, the draft. OTAs have started. They have their 90-man roster assembled, and this is the offensive side of the ball. And so you have at quarterback, you have Russell Wilson, Josh Johnson, and Brett Ripien. One of the things we talked about is 3 quarterbacks versus 4 quarterbacks.
Yes.
And our thought on that was related to reps.
Yes.
And
it's kind of weird not saying a 4th.
Yeah, but maybe shortening that quarterback line as you install a Nathaniel Hackett offense, for Russell Wilson and Josh Johnson to get more of those reps and not just have a 4th arm in the.
But I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did the Chargers do 3 quarterbacks
Right now, there's 4 quarterbacks on the roster.
in the first year.
I don't. So the 3 quarterbacks, 3 of the 4 quarterbacks were on the roster last year. I don't know if they carried a 4th through camp or if one spent time on the practice squad.
Okay.
We'll have to go back and research that. But running with 3 quarterbacks. Russell Wilson's your obvious starter there. At running back, Javonte Williams had a good rookie season. I think a lot of people are thinking Javonte
Will be your starter.
will be your starter, and are looking for him to do some good things in Denver. Somebody that the Chargers are familiar with is RB2 right now, it seems, and Melvin Gordon. I think he was brought back on he re-signed a free agency deal with the Broncos. And I think he'll split time with Javonte a little bit, but probably be RB2 and it'll be probably good when he's on the field that you know who you have in a Melvin Gordon. And 3 other running backs that I'm not overly familiar with. We'll see how their running back room comes together as they move through mandatory minicamp and into training camp. One fullback, he's carrying a number 83, so he might be more tight end than traditional fullback. At tight end, currently 6 on the roster. So you have Albert O, Eric Saubert. They drafted Greg Dulcich out of UCLA, signed Eric Tomlinson from the Ravens, and then Dylan Parham and Rodney Williams. It'll be interesting to see how many they carry into the season. I don't think you can get a Dulcich to the practice squad. Somebody might snag him and put on their roster. So interesting to see how that plays out.
So you think he already has a spot?
Yeah, that's why I have him to the left there, and you got to reserve one of those 53-man roster spots for him, along with a lot of the rookies, right, that are drafted.
Yes.
You spent draft capital. Wide receiver, they have a lot of wide receivers.
So many that you didn't even know how to list them.
Yeah, it was so 13 in total. You have Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick. Both of them are on their second contracts. Jerry Jeudy is coming up on his, towards the end of his rookie contract.
Yes.
One of the, topics that we thought we might have for our big 3 topics on the Denver Broncos was Jerry Jeudy and his off the field stuff. But this week his court case was dismissed. The charges were not filed and was dismissed. Don't know if that means that we'll end up seeing potentially a suspension from the league if there's enough there, or if there's not, like we said, we're not experts. We have no idea.
We have absolutely none.
And so we'll see.
We are not lawyers. We are not judges.
Yeah.
As well.
But it seems like Jerry Jeudy will be there for most of the season. KJ Hamler, Travis Fulgham, who got some run with the Eagles, Kendall Hinton, who was the break glass in case of emergency in that famous Denver Saints Kendall Hinton versus Tyson Hill.
Tyson.
Yeah, USFL matchup there.
Type game.
Yeah. You have the draft pick, Montrell Washington, and then a laundry list of other players. I'm not going to pretend like I know who a lot of these guys are, but
I think
we'll see how that shakes out. And whether
Washington was a backup plan for
Well, he's out of Sanford. He's out of a small school, so
Judy.
you gotta see what you have first before you can pencil him in on the roster. But I mean, it could be a case of where they decide to carry 6 wide receivers.
Yeah.
Maybe there's probably room for that. No real line of sight on who the returner is. I'm sure some Locked On Broncos or other Broncos podcasts would fully understand that. But just looking at the roster from the Chargers' perspective, hard to tell at this point. Offensive line. If you go to PFF and look at how they project the depth, you have Garrett Bowles at left tackle, Dalton Reisner at left guard, Lloyd Cushenberry at center, right guard is Graham Glasgow, and their new signee Billy Turner at right tackle. This is one of those cases where when Nathaniel Hackett came in, Mike Munchak was the offensive line coach, traditionally considered one of the best. Top 3, top, however, 2 maybe offensive line coaches in the recent NFL era. And Nathaniel Hackett decided to not retain Mike Munchak. A little surprising, but yeah.
Yes.
So at least a lot of these players got to work with Mike Munchak, if you will, and we'll see how they progress now that there's somebody new in the building. Luke Wattenberg is on here as a backup center who was drafted. We'll see if he makes that roster. Quinn Meinertz was a draft darling in 2021. He can play center. He can play guard. He got some run last year when I think there was some injuries, so he has some experience getting into his second year. He should take some steps forward. Tom Compton is that signee from the 49ers.
The 49ers.
And then a laundry list that I'm not overly familiar with here, but we'll see how they're currently carrying 16 on the roster, and we'll see how that shakes out. So then moving on to the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line, you brought in DJ Jones once again from the 49ers.
Yes.
Mike Purcell, Draymond Jones, that's who, those are the 3
people,
linemen that PFF had starting in a base 3-4 defense. You have your draft picks, Awuzurike, Henningsen, and then Deshaun Williams, Marquise Spencer, Jonathan Harris, McTelvin, Agam. I mean, I don't see any names that jump off the screen there.
Yes, I don't.
How do they recover from Shelby Harris moving on? It'll be interesting to see how that defensive line plays. At defensive end or outside linebacker or edge, however you want to refer to this group of players, this room, you have Bradley Chubb. I think he was injured part of the year last year. How does he make it back onto the field, and how does he play when he's on the field? You bringing in Randy Gregory opposite Bradley Chubb, and then Jonathan Cooper played a lot of snaps, and then your rookie Nick Benito. Maybe some room here to keep a 5th, maybe, or maybe you get some run. If you don't keep a 5th, maybe you get some run out of an Awuzurike or a Henningsen, potentially. Who knows? But they have a lot of work to do on that defensive line, outside linebacker. How are they going to stop the run, and how are they going to get after the quarterback?
Yes, a lot of options there.
At linebacker, seems like maybe Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton. You do have last year's draft pick, Baron Browning, who is an incredible athlete. Let's see how he transitions from last year's defense in his second year to this year's defense. Jonas Griffith, and 4 other names there: Justin Sternod, Kanai Mauga, Gaddafi Wright, and Barrington Wade.
Names that don't really jump off the page.
Yeah, I think they need Alex Singleton and Baron Browning to really step up. I think Josie Jewell's a good linebacker. I imagine, if I remember correctly, he might struggle in coverage, like a lot of inside linebackers. So they probably need to make sure that they're playing well at that position. At cornerback, with Patrick Surtain, the second a high draft pick in 2021, he's back. He's back in his second year. How does he improve? Ronald Darby is still there. K'Wan Williams was brought in from the 49ers. And then you have Damari Mathis, their draft pick out of Pitt. And then once again, a long list of corners. And it's safeties, obviously. Free safety Justin Simmons, one of the best in the league. They re-signed Kareem Jackson for strong safety. Brought in J.R. Reed.
For what? For
safety.
Safety, but
Caden.
strong or...
Well, I'm not overly familiar with his game. One of these guys is going to be a backup at free and have more single high tendency, and others are going to be more box safeties.
Yes.
But I'm not overly familiar.
I'm not as well. That's why I asked.
In the specialist category, they brought in Corliss Waitman, I guess, to compete with Sam Martin. Let's see how that pans out. But Brandon McManus is back as their kicker for another year.
As a punt.
Always a great
Punters and
fantasy
kickers.
kicker.
Yes. No.
No fantasy talk?
No fantasy talk.
Oh, my bad. And then long snapper, they retained Jacob Bobenmoyer. One of the things about the defense is it's in transition from a Vic Fangio defense to a Dom Capers style 3-4 defense. How does that transition go?
That could have been one of our 3 questions.
It wasn't, but
now that I'm thinking about it.
But yeah, how do we? How does this defense come together quickly, and potentially, not be an issue early in the season? They're going to really have to play well in the secondary, and they're going to have to find their way at at inside linebacker, just like every other team. But I think this is going to be an uphill climb for them. I don't know how steep the slope of that hill is going to be.
Yes.
But they got a lot of work to do on defense.
I have a thought.
Okay.
What if we watch the Broncos week 1?
Well, I think
And see.
Yeah, we're going to have to take a look at them. Obviously, as we get into the regular season, the week before, as we're heading into the first Denver game, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that a Monday nighter in SoFi?
Yes.
So as we're looking at the week before that game, we'll watch the previous week game and maybe 1 or 2 games of the Broncos as we prepare. So we'll definitely get a sense. I don't know as though we'll watch them week 1, but we'll try and see how this defense comes together early in the season. Obviously, plenty of time in a season for them to be good.
There's 17 games.
Yeah, there's plenty of time for them to be a much improved defense by the time we get to week 18 and that final game of the season in Denver.
Yes.
On both sides of the football for both teams. But I think if you have the Broncos early on your schedule and you have a good offense, you may be able to
Catch him sleeping.
you may be able to outscore them for a win. Let's see.
Yeah.
Not predicting it, just potentially something I see there as they transition. Their offense is going to be, I think their offense is going to play better earlier in the season than their defense is going to play.
At least their quarterback's better.
Yeah, they have that top name quarterback. All right, so this brings us to the big three topics that we've kind of hinted along the way. But here, that the biggest thing is that new regime.
Yes.
We're past the George Payton portion of the off season and really into the Nathaniel Hackett. If you've watched Brandon Staley talk in his press conferences, that year one install, everything they do being new can be challenging. And I'm sure that's what Nathaniel Hackett is going through today or at the present time.
At one of the press conferences, our head coach said a thing about year one is repeating yourself over and over again.
I mean, starting with the culture, continuing with how we execute each, particular thing in practice. How do we install? How do we? It's everything is new to every player and every coach, and I'm sure they are
Repeating themselves.
spending a lot of time on that, which is a good thing for the rest of the AFC West.
Yes.
But I will say, George Payton as the general manager, if we're comparing draft classes and offseason moves between the Raiders and the Broncos, I give the edge to the Broncos. Yes, the Raiders acquired Devontae Adams, but the Broncos made a similar move in acquiring a quarterback like Russell Wilson. But the number of moves and the way they drafted, I would give the edge to the Broncos there. So it'll be interesting to see how he continues on as general manager for the Denver Broncos.
Denver Broncos.
The second big thing is the new quarterback. We've all seen Russell Wilson play in Seattle, on the turf in Seattle, and
These aren't Russell Wilson numbers.
yeah, and the numbers that you're seeing on the screen, these are not traditional Russell Wilson numbers. Maybe the touchdown to interception ratio, but obviously he had a finger injury last year that kept him out of, I think, 3 or 4 games, if I'm not mistaken.
Amount of games.
Yeah, so traditionally that yardage number, I'm sure, is closer to 4,000 than it is to 3,000 for him. That rating is probably lower than he
expected.
typically. Yeah. But we've seen Russell in a Seattle offense with Pete Carroll the whole time, not always having the best offensive line in front of him, having wide receivers that can get open downfield and throwing those deep passes, lofting them up in the air, and
I think
wide receivers running under, and him scrambling
yes.
a lot. So is this offense that's going to be that similar, like drop back, scramble, try to hit somebody deep? I don't think so. I think they're going to do a better job of pass protecting.
Yes.
I think he's got 3 wide receivers in Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, that will be able to get open.
Yes. I have a thing to ask.
Yeah.
Is it usually like the NBA where you need a big 3 wide receivers?
Well, it's always helpful and it's always good to not have the same 3, the same type of wide receiver in all 3 positions, to have a little bit of a mix. with Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton on the outside, and Jerry Jeudy in slot.
On the inside.
Yeah, on the inside, then you should have plenty of height on the outside and short area quickness and route running in the slot and on the inside. You add in then an Albert O, a Greg Dulcich at tight end with a Javonte Williams and a Melvin Gordon out of the backfield. And, Russ has had some decent running games, but I don't think he's had this level of offensive line with this mix of wide receivers and, potential running backs. So be quite interesting.
The Seahawks built an offensive line after Russ.
It was always like an afterthought, and they tried in certain circumstances, and just always something seemed to get in their way.
Didn't work out.
Yeah. But we talked about Madden, the cover of Madden 23. I think a lot of people were surprised by Denver acquiring Russell Wilson almost in a Madden type trade. Some YouTuber sitting on his YouTube channel saying,
Yes.
"Hey, why don't I try to get Russell Wilson to the Broncos?" And now it's like real life imitating Madden, and it should be interesting.
Also with Devontae Adams.
With Devontae Adams, with Tyreek Hill, definitely a Madden offseason. But yeah, with Russell Wilson, he's in a new system, new town. Let's see how it fits him.
New scheme.
Yep. And then the third one is once again around a outside linebacker swap. So, Von Miller, long career in Denver, Super Bowl win, number 2 pick in the draft behind, I think, Cam Newton?
I don't know.
I think so.
We should have probably
researched that, but I remember them having similar body types and speed between the two, and one playing quarterback and the other one playing outside linebacker. So, but Von Miller being a key piece of a Denver defense, winning a Super Bowl, and last year he goes to the Rams. They get 2 picks in return. He wins a second Super Bowl with the Rams, and now you bring in Randy Gregory. Obviously, Randy.
Will that be upgrade or downgrade?
Well, he's Randy's a little bit younger. He has had some bumps in the roads, if you will.
Yes.
So is that all in his past? And does he get on the field and just wreak havoc opposite Bradley Chubb? We're gonna find out. His team, Dallas, seemed like they really wanted to keep him in town. So it's not like Denver was the lone suitor for Randy. The Cowboys wanted him back, but he ends up in Denver, and
because of contract language.
Yeah, he apparently didn't like the contract language. So, and he had a pretty decent season last year with 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and an INT. He just really needs to stay on the field, learn this defense, and gel with the rest of
the team.
The team, that defensive side of the ball. They have some. I'm sure they're going to have some early growing pains, and like we said, likely to be a different team late in the season.
Yep.
So after going through the regime that's coming in, the off-season moves that they made, the trade for Russell Wilson, their draft class, their free agent signings, looking at their 90-man roster.
Third.
Just jumping straight to it, you think they're third in the AFC West?
It's not as bad as, previous, but there's going to be some growing pains.
Yeah.
Russ will need a bounce back year.
Right.
Because it's not like Russ was traded at the peak of his
career. He still has plenty of years
well,
left at 33.
not
But you're right in the fact that he's probably not peak Russell Wilson at this point, especially after that finger injury.
Yes. He will need a bounce back year.
Yeah.
That's basically what I'm saying. So I think third placement in the division.
In a very tough AFC West.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, why did they fire their
offensive line coach?
Offensive line coach. That seemed weird.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, I'm sure Nathaniel Hackett had his reasons. The biggest thing is Mike Munchak wants to live in Denver because his daughter and family are in Denver. And why wouldn't you just keep him on your staff if he's not the head offensive line coach? Why couldn't he be a special consultant? But, oh well.
Yeah.
That's his decision. So that's the Denver Broncos. They are going to be interesting.
Interesting to watch.
I think they're beatable early in the season. Catch them before that defense gels, and then just be prepared. The Chargers need to be prepared for Week 18 in Denver. I'm sure the weather is going to be an issue. Yeah, let's see. Let's see how Russell Wilson adjusts to playing all his home games on natural grass surface, whereas in Seattle he was always on turf, and most of his away games were, except for San Francisco, Arizona has kind of that manicured. It'll be interesting to see how he does. Out in the elements, if you will. The elements, more snow in Denver than in Seattle. Seattle's more rain. So let's just see how that all shakes out. Anyways, that brings us to the end of this episode. Our early look at the 2022 Denver Broncos. And with that, do us a favor. Follow and like us on Twitter at LAC Outside Zone.
Follow and
subscribe, like, and turn on notifications here on YouTube at Chargers Outside Zone, the channel. Yes. And please send us an email, chargersoutsidezone@gmail.com. It was interesting going through this roster and putting that all together for you. So thank you very much if you made it this far. Do us a favor, join us every Tuesday and Saturday for new episodes, and we'll see you later.
Next will be the Chiefs.
Next Saturday.
What are we doing for Tuesday?
Don't know yet. We'll try to figure that out between now and then.
Okay.
All right. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.